When the IPL started, we knew pretty much nothing about T20 cricket. The early England teams did their best, but there was no real reason for players to be specialists. So when the IPL first rolled around, we saw RCB pick a test team, as the thought back then was the best proper cricketers were always going to be better than T20 bashers. That is clearly not how people think about things anymore. If you are Kevon Cooper or Ben Cutting, you could get paid heaps more than Vernon Philander or Dimas Karunaratne. But those early seasons still exist, and often the way we looked at them back then was with little knowledge of how T20 cricket actually worked. And so what we wanted to do is look at the best players in each edition of the IPL, but with the knowledge that we have today. This means we will re-examine some of the well-known seasons, but also shed light on some that just weren't given much airtime back then. We are not looking at just the best player from each year, but the players who had an MVP quality season. If you like that idea, hit us up in the comments, press the bell icon and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. We have gone through every completed IPL season so far. And in order to do that, the majority of the metrics we are using are contextual, because when you do something in T20 makes a huge difference. We are starting here with the true average. If you come to the wicket for the first ball of the innings, you are expected to average 33 in the IPL for the last 12 months. But if you enter the match with a score of 25 for 4, you're obviously not going to average 33. So we factored those things in to come up with a true average. If you look at the top 10 players all time when it comes to just average, you'll find a lot of openers. But if you look at it from true average, you get a lot of players batting from number 1 to number 7. That's the spread we're looking for. Of course, none of this means anything without strike rate. But looking at the raw strike rates of players is hugely deceiving. Someone who bats in the middle overs can strike at 135 and be well above the normal rate at that time, while someone at the death might strike at 145 and be well behind it. Every ball has a different strike rate in T20 cricket. The first ball is 60, the last ball is 173. So if you score a single off that first delivery, you are plus 0.4 runs. If you manage a single from the last delivery, you are down 0.7 runs. And so we have looked at everyone's strike rate by the ball they face to come up with the true strike rate. Also, there are bowlers in T20 cricket as well. True economy is basically exactly the same as true strike rate, but for bowlers. And true wickets is looking at how many wickets a bowler's got and what a normal bowler delivering the same kinds of overs should have got. Again, a lot of wickets happen at the end, so death bowlers tend to dominate the leaderboards. But the bowlers who take wickets early and in the middle at higher rates are usually more valuable. And so we have a metric that shows just how many wickets above or below expectation each player has. But we're also looking at the raw counting stats. Each player that is involved here has at least 250 balls, because you have to be involved with that many deliveries to have an MVP-like impact on the tournament. The idea is to look at the players who might have been overlooked for various cap winners or player of the tournament winners. All right, on with the MVPs. We clearly see two outliers on this list, Virender Sehwag and Shaun Marsh. Both were openers, but they added value in completely different ways. Sehwag was well ahead of his time. He was much quicker than his peers in this format. He is perhaps the equivalent of Viv Richards in T20 cricket, although without the hype. While Marsh was an elite wicket preserver who scored at a pretty good clip himself, even in today's era, a player like him would be in demand. He was Faf before Faf happened, even though they are basically the same age, so I'm not quite sure how that works. Jaya Surya and Yusuf Pathan had incredible seasons as well. The Sri Lankan opener played this way before there was T20 cricket, so he just continued to slap from ball one here. Yusuf was one of the few prototype T20 players that India has ever produced. And even now, Yusuf stands out as a strange Indian player. But Sohail Tanvir was clearly the standout bowler in the inaugural edition of the campaign. Not only in terms of true wickets, but also he was numero uno in terms of economy. He was the entire enchilada. You'll see a bunch of good performances from fast bowlers, Steyn, Pollock, Nehra, Munaf and Dinder. They all have very good true economies and then are about par in terms of true wickets. But two of the greatest bowlers in history in any format, McGrath and Murali, had very similar seasons. They were extremely economical, showing that test quality bowling still had a value in this shortest format. Of course, they were also great ODI bowlers, so maybe it makes more sense. Irfan and Maharouf also extremely useless in their respective roles, power play bowling and middle overs enforcer. But we need to talk about Shane Watson, the actual MVP. He scored 472 runs at over 9 and over and took 17 wickets with an economy of 7.7. making it arguably one of the greatest all-round performances in an IPL season ever. To top it off, he also played a crucial part in the playoffs with both bat and with ball as Rajasthan won the title. These are just incredible numbers. Watson was essentially a frontline batter and a frontline bowler for the Royals that season. That almost never happened, seeing Narayan's batting or Russell's bowling. We talk about all-rounders all the time, but at best, most players do really well in one discipline and then just hold their own in the other. What Shane Watson did was something else. The following numbers testify to the fact that he just had an incredible workload. Let's look at year 2. The IPL winning skipper, Adam Gilchrist, had a pretty high impact season with a bat. He scored a memorable 35 ball 85 in the semi-final against Delhi. His co-opener, Matthew Hayden, also had a terrific season for CSK, performing extremely well on both true average and true strike rate. Mr. IPL, Suresh Raina, ably supported him. De Villiers had his first breakthrough IPL season, something that he would continue pretty much, throughout the next 13 years. The two Sri Lankans, Murali and Malinga, were the most economical bowlers in the competition that season. But it was RCB Skinner Anil Kumble who had an all-timer of a performance when it comes to true economy and also true wickets. And it's funny now because he's not looked at as someone who was very good at T20. He remains the only player to win player of the match in an IPL final that was a losing cause. Harbhajan and Murali Kartik also had very good defensive bowling campaigns. Amongst the quicks, Neera and RP Singh basically had identical seasons in very similar roles. Munaf Patel finished as the best bowler in terms of true wickets that season. But Andrew Simons had a brilliant all-round campaign for the Chargers, even though he only played 8 games. Not only did he score quick runs, but he also kept the scoring rate in check when he was bowling. We truly missed his T20 peak. In ODI cricket, the Australians actually held him back for years, but in T20 we saw glimpses of what he could have been. And remember, in 2009, he was well past his best. Year 3, Tendulkar and Raina had superb seasons for top-order bats. Not only were they elite at their primary skill of wicket preservation, they also scored well above the average run rates in the phases they batted. Jarrod, a T20 World Cup legend, also had a similar season. But look at the extreme right. There were 4 Indian batters that were standouts in terms of scoring rates. Murali Vijay and Sehwag did it as openers, while Robert Uthappa and Yusuf Pathan cracked the more challenging middle order role. Let's not forget that Yusuf was also a pretty handy part-timer along with it, making his efforts that season even better. Uthappa had 2 seasons like this, and in between he was kind of nothing like it, and it's a real shame. R. Ashwin delivered big time in his first full season for the Super Kings. He was extremely hard to get away because of all the variations that he possessed. There was actually quite a few spinners though this year. Have a look at Kumble, Murali, Amit Mishra and Murali Kartik. They were all very, very good defensive spin bowlers. But Pragyan Ojha was the standout in terms of wicket-taking spinners. Sadly, when his action was eventually questioned, he couldn't maintain anything like this form and he faded away. Stain and Malinga were the best fast bowlers that year, but surprisingly, Pollard sat on top of the true wickets list. He's a canny wicket taker, I tell you. So he had a brilliant all-round season. In fact, Pollard just hit a lot of sixes and took a bunch of wickets. And he did it way better than any other player in a similar kind of role did. It was arguably his best all-round season in the IPL. For 2011, Chris Gayle was signed as a replacement for Dirk Nannes. That's not quite a like for like. But the rest, I suppose, is history. That season was the start of what would be one of the greatest peaks in T20 cricket ever. There's many people who call him the Bradman of T20, right? The fact that he sits top right of our graph, and so many from that era, speaks volume about the fact that he would score consistently at speed. Virender Sehwag was exceptional as well. He understood T20 in the truest sense and was one of the best players in the power play. Badranath is an interesting player. He is the second highest true average by any batter in that season, and he was a utility player for CSK who would anchor on slow and tricky wickets if there was a collapse. But Lasith Malinga had an unreal season as an all-phase bowler. He gets a lot of credit for bowling at the death, but he was kind of good everywhere. He was a very smart bowler, and this was getting to the point where he was still an incredible physical bowler, but also all of his mental skills were coming through as well. But we need to talk about Rahul Sharma. He's a streets will never forget kind of player in the IPL. He even ended up playing international cricket this season. And when I googled Rahul Sharma before this to get some of his other stats, the first thing that actually came up was other bowlers. It's like he never even existed. His performance on our metrics are incredible. It is one of the best seasons ever in the IPL by a spinner not called Sunil Narine or Rashid Khan. And if you don't like our advanced numbers, fine. On raw numbers, he averaged 17 and went at 5.5 runs and over. By 2014, so just a couple of years later, he was going at double that, and he never played again. I'm not sure any player has ever had a better season and a shorter career in the IPL. And our last year for this episode is 2012. Yet another season where Gale is on the top right and Sehwag is on the extreme right. At this point, no one should be surprised with those two as gun openers. Kevin Peterson and AB de Villiers had very good seasons as well, as did Cameron White. By the end of his career, White could barely score at a run of ball in T20, but early on, he hit the ball as far as anyone and held the record for the fastest 100 in T20 cricket for quite some time. Sadly, we only got one great IPL season out of him. Gautam Gambhir's numbers are interesting here. While he was usually an anchor-type player who did not score very fast, he was the 5th quickest batter when it comes to true strike rate from this season. This was the year that Gautam got his groove on. But Sunil Narine had arguably the best ever season by a bowler in IPL history right then and there. You could see him at the top left, implying that he took an absolute bucket load of wickets while conceding no actual runs. An asset like him just makes your team so much better. Peak Sunil Narine was an incredible monster. It's unbelievable to think that we actually had another version, the all-rounder Narine, and then another version again, the parsimonious Narine. He's been involved in more makeovers than the Queer Eye team. Well, we hope you liked this video. The next one will be on 2013 to 2017. So why don't you head into the comments and put your favorites in now and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the episode.